I appreciate all you guys coming out the Fridays. For those, I think some of you guys the first time, these topics kind of vacillate between technical topics, business topics. This is kind of one of those. It's got a personal thing. Resilience is a kind of a personal thing, but today's topic is about resilience and the success of a company. So just thinking about big picture, and so it's a personal thing that translates into success for a company. So. I'm pleased to. We actually have a pro in the house, basically. I've known Nina, and ever since I've known her, well, I guess I've first got to know you remotely, I guess, watching you on TV.
Back in the day.
It was Channel 2? Mm-hmm. Channel 2, yeah. So she just told me a little tidbit here, which is her husband was actually the weatherman at Channel 2, which I didn't know, by the way.
Very scandalous.
So Nina's an accomplished leader with experience in executive communications, corporate culture, media, public speaking, and television. As a member of the leadership team at Benefit Focus for 12 years, Nina initially built the media department and then ran marketing and communications for 21 months during the company's very critical IPO period, one of the most, and what's significant about Benefit Focus in 2013, they're one of the most successful IPOs of 2013. She's an award-winning news anchor right here in Charleston, world-class athlete, a gymnast, and is now a best-selling author and speaker. And see, I have to go back. My notes don't have the name of the book here, which is, This Is Not the End, Strategies to Get Through the Worst Chapters of Your Life. That's the actual title of the book. A dynamic leader, Nina was named a woman of distinction by the state of South Carolina. Nina shares, today it's, shares a proven approach to individuals facing life's hardships, growing from adversity, and controlling their own, or your own destiny. So this is all about building that resilience framework, and so if you would, without further ado, please welcome Nina Sosman-Poe. Thank you.
Thank you, Ernest. Thank you. So I've been to these events at the Digital Corridor. Ernest always puts together really interesting content, and today's going to be a little bit different. Some familiar faces in here. We're not going to talk about big data or cybersecurity. I'm not going to do systems integrations. We're not going to try to get your TAM just right if you're in the financial piece. We're going to talk about what happens when you're a leader or we're in a company and things don't go right. So at times it's going to be a little uncomfortable because we're going to talk about the times when you think you have the answers and you don't, or you go to launch a product and it fails, or your company's going under. The times when you look at leadership in a very different way. And what I found is the leaders who handle things when they go wrong are the ones who themselves and their companies are stronger. So we're looking at resilience, but it's your own resilience, your team's resilience, or your company's resilience. We're going to look at it from a corporate perspective this morning, okay? And so I have a lay of the land for this group. I know some familiar faces in here. People who are in the marketing space, the engineering space, IT or systems integration type engineering, there we go. Delivery, financial, leadership, it's a bunch of leadership. What am I missing? Anything I'm missing? Operations. Content. Bucky Wall, content. I worked with Bucky at Benefit Focus for years. Okay, well that helps me as I share some of this information with you this morning. So we're going to start right here at home, here in Charleston, with this. So most of you should know what this is. This is the Angel Oak, and it is right here in Charleston, and I love to start with this image because think about when this giant tree, it is 28 feet around, for those of you who haven't been out there, it's immense. The trunk is 28 feet around. They estimate it's been there 400 to 500 years. Just think about it, at some point this was a seed. Among many, many seeds, probably thousands of seeds in that field. And that one seed became this. So how does that happen? Is it special seed? What is interesting about that? If we do it from a human perspective, for people, here's an example. A young girl, African American, born into poverty. She's molested as a child. She gets pregnant when she's 14. She loses the baby. She has to live with her uncle. She finally somehow makes it through school and gets into college. She gets a dream job that she loves, and then she's let go because she's too emotional. That woman is Oprah. So how does Oprah become the giant tree? How does Oprah become Oprah? So if you look at it from an individual perspective, what is it? What type of person has that kind of resilience? From a corporate perspective, a company that's a toy company in Europe comes up with a fun toy in the 60s. In the 70s, it gets big. We all grew up with them. They're Legos. So you have Legos. Raise your hand if you played with Legos. We're a bunch of nerds in here. We all played with Legos. I grew up with Legos. It is an amazing story of a company. So that company in 2003 was about to go bankrupt. It has $800 million in debt, and it was about to go under in 2003. So how does, and now?
My son was born in 2004.
Yes.
That explains it. I single-handedly saved it.
You single-handedly saved it. She single-handedly saved Legos. So now I don't even need to finish the story because the mystery solved right here. Yeah, but so Legos, this is an amazing story. They've been around for a long time. They could have just said, well, we ran a good course. You know, it's been an amazing ride. But now look, there's a Lego movie. There's Legos for every different genre that's out there now. And have anybody seen the new Lego show? I watched the Master Builder show. I actually watched it this week. That's a TV show now. So that's a thing. Legos partnered with, how they did it, they partnered, they first decided to partner with Star Wars and some of those entities to put the Star Wars sets out there, and then they did the Raiders of the Lost Ark set. So they partnered with Disney to do that, and then Disney also did the movies and the Lego movies, so they became this new entity of themselves. How does Lego become Lego? Another great example of resilience. They could have just said, wow, it's been a great ride, let's keep going. So we're looking at resilience from several different angles, and what type of company, what type of person becomes that resilient? And we're going to start off with you, your company, your team. And we're going to figure out where you all fit in resilience first, which is kind of fun. Now we're going to start personally for you. And to do that, I'm using, I didn't make this up. This is out of Forbes magazine, huge data sets. Forbes magazine says, through some of the research they looked at, all of us can be put in one of four buckets, okay? I don't want to label you. I'm not trying to do that. I don't like to put labels on people. I don't want to pigeonhole you into one thing. But just for the sake of argument for today, all of us can go into one of four buckets. And I'm going to tell you a scenario, and then you're going to make a decision about how you feel. So the first, the big picture is you are in charge of running a meeting for your group. You have a team of people. You're in charge of actually presenting the data and the information you have, and you step in the room and you're presenting. And you've got your slides really well done. You've got all the research you've done on this client. You have done due diligence with all of your different teams in the different parts of the company that are working with this client. You feel like you have a good handle on their integration and on their operations and how many JIRAs they have open. You really know this client well. And then you have data visualization, so you can really show them it in pretty colors. You have done everything you can to make this a really good presentation for this client. And you do. And they come in, the room is set well, you do your meeting, you're watching for the clues, they nod. They smile at times. You're getting all the feedback you want. And you have this great meeting and you feel like you really have this client and you've got a handle on this. And it ends, everybody feels good, you're high-fiving your team, you go home to your family, you do whatever you do in the evening, cook dinner, hang out, whatever. You come in the next morning and your boss, your CEO, whoever it is, walks up to you and they say, the client called this morning. They went with somebody else. Your presentation didn't hit the mark. Okay. In that moment, you thought of something. The client called this morning, they went with somebody else, and your presentation didn't hit the mark. All right. Got a feeling in your gut that you just felt? Let's figure out where you fit in. Oops. 1, do you feel like I just let the team down? I just let my boss down? Everybody was looking to me to really win this, and I blew it? Do you, 2, feel like, let me rethink everything that I just did. Let me go back, and what did I miss? Was there a phone call I missed? Did somebody not turn in a report? What am I missing that I should have had in there? Did you, 3, feel like, oh, that didn't work. Let's figure out the next thing. I've got 5 other clients that can fill in this gap. Let's move forward. That's not going to work. Fine, fill this gap. We got to get another client in there because we have a number to hit. Or did you, 4, feel like, there's got to be something bigger going on? Like there's something bigger going on with the industry. The industry's changing. Our CEO and their CEO are having some discussion on the side. Something else is going on. Let's think big picture on this, okay? So you have to pick one, and I personally am a little bit of 1 and 2 with some bucket 5, which is a whole lot of crazy. If that was a bucket, I don't know. But you have to pick one, your first gut instinct when that happened. All right, so everybody knows what bucket you're in? Okay, I won't ask. I'm just going to let you, in your own mind, hold on to that. So bucket 1, you guys are the empathizers. I feel really bad I let the team down. Got some young women in the back nodding. Yes, I feel bad I let the team down. Crap. And bucket 2, you're the processors. Let's go back, some of your operations guys. Where do we go wrong? Let's think about all the things that happened leading up to this. Bucket 3, you're the fixers. That didn't work. Let's move forward. Got to fill this gap. We got to make a spot. Some of the engineers are raising their hands. And then bucket 5 are the analyzers. Big picture. Where are we with this? Right. So that's how we would label you if we were to be so rude as to label you. But those are the labels that you would be given per this big data. Now what's interesting is when they overlaid this data and they looked at the big sets, this is what we look like in general as a society, as in our office spaces, in our workspaces. And so you've got a lot of empathizers and processors in America right now. You have a lot of people who are trying to do a good job and doing a lot of great work. You have the small number of the fixers. That 11% is really interesting. Only 11% said, okay, come on, pick up the ball, keep running. We got to find a way to fill this gap. And then you have your analyzers, which is about 20%, which seems to make sense to me for some reason. But the fixers, that 11%, that's a small amount. What was really fascinating is when they took this and they overlaid the data from the entire study and they looked at all of that different questions together, those fixers are higher in job satisfaction, higher in their satisfaction overall with their career and where they are and they're setting towards their goals. Those are your fixers, that 11%. So how do we get more people like that who are in our companies, who are keeping our companies moving forward while the rest of us are going, crud, what went wrong there? And think about it, you've all worked with these folks. I know I have, where you have a big meeting and you present all this stuff, even if it's just your CEO for concept stuff, and you step out of it and then you say, and it doesn't go well. He hates the idea, or somebody pokes holes in it, or it's just, oh, you missed this your data's completely wrong on this, you just went down the wrong rabbit hole. You step out of that meeting and everybody huddles up and goes, wow, this didn't work, that didn't work, what were we thinking? Like, if Bob had done his part and if Carol had done this, and maybe we should have called this other client to get bigger, more feedback. And you're having this conversation, and there's one person that kind of walks away and goes, okay, well, I'm going to go work on the next thing. And we look at them like, shouldn't you feel like crap like the rest of us? Wait, get back here into our little unhappy huddle. But that's the person that's actually happiest with their job. How do we build a group of people who aren't all huddling and somebody keeps the ball going down the street? We need those people. And for those of us who aren't those people, how do we be a little bit more like that? How do we build a culture of that in our companies because we have big goals? And we're not doing so hot at it as a society right now. In the US right now, the numbers of suicide is up, the numbers of depression is up, more people are on meds, children on meds by the time they're 5, some of them. We have, in 2018, 21 million people were fired from their jobs. Sounds like a big number, 21 million people fired from their jobs. In that same year, 40 million people quit their jobs. Almost double the number of people quit their jobs. For lots of different reasons. They could have maybe had a great offer elsewhere and jumped, or maybe they just got tired of what they were doing and they left, or maybe they just thought it was all too hard and just quit. But they quit their jobs. And part of that is our responsibility as people who are leaders in companies and who are thinking big picture and trying to do hard things. We need these people to stick with us. How do we get these people to stick with us? If 40 million people a year are just, I quit, I'm gonna go try someplace else. All that hard work you did to get them in the company first, to hire and recruit them and get them here, to train them up, to get them to actually understand your system, which takes months to even figure out how to work within your code and what you're working on. And now they last a short amount of time and then they leave. How do we get around that? We're not doing a great job of it right now. And part of it is this resilience piece as a society. So we've just made it easier for everybody, especially the people in this room, all the technology people. We've made technology so people don't have to work too hard. I mean, think about it. You don't have to be wrong for more than a few seconds because you can just Google it. You don't have to cook, like go shopping and cook. You can just order some food and they can either come to you already done and cooked or partially done and cooked or already measured, so you don't have to measure and worry about that, and you can just put it together. Or you don't have to go shopping and stand in line and deal with that really snarky clerk at the line. You just ordered on Amazon. Who's ordered something on Amazon? Everybody raise your hand, and it shows up at your door. I get irritated if my credit card doesn't auto-populate, okay? I'm one of those people, and we all know those people. So we have just made life easier. We've just made it all so much simpler for people. And that's part of what we're fighting at a corporate level for hiring and for retaining and for creating this culture of a good culture, whatever you want to call that, some type of happiness factor that gets people to stay. Is it a beanbag chair? Is it free coffee? Is it, your endless amounts of days off? We've tried everything. All of the companies have tried different things. What is the answer to that? How do we build it? My argument would be we need to teach people how to deal with stuff when it goes wrong. We need to get people to toughen up a little bit and handle difficulties. And the difficulties I call thises. So there's the big thises in life. These are the big ones. So you have a plan for your life, you're going down this road. The big thises in life are you get a divorce, you lose your job, your company goes under, you're diagnosed with a horrible disease. Those are big thises. They take your life in a new direction. There's not a way to keep going in that direction. Those big things are going to happen, and they're going to take your life in a new direction. So everybody in your company probably going to have a big this in their life at some point. And then there's the capital T thises. This is you have a crappy quarter. You launch a product, and it doesn't go well. You have one of your biggest customers calls and goes with somebody else, and you were really counting on them to make your number. Those are the big thises that happen. You break your leg at the busiest time of your year, and you're one of those people who's the travel warrior that I see in the Charlotte or Atlanta airport all the time. So those people, you break your leg, that's going to really affect how you can do the big stuff that knocks your plans off course for more than just a day or so. You got to make some big adjustments. You still have your big plans. You still have your big strategic goals. I mean, you've spent time on these strategic goals and these plans, and you have this whole team marching in one direction. But that's going to knock you off. And then there's the everyday. This is the traffic on your way. The bridge is closed here in Charleston. That's a big, that's a little this. I might put that at the top some days, just to say, because it's really annoying. But those thises are, you spill coffee into your laptop. You have your kids' school calls in the middle of your big meeting. You just have something that keeps you from getting done what you set out to do that morning. Those are the everyday thises that just happen. Sometimes you'll walk in your office. I know when I would just try to get to my workspace when I was at Benefit Focus, sometimes 3 people would hit me before I could even get to my space with questions. And I had a plan for that day. I had stuff I was going to get done. But now I've got all this other stuff coming at me. How do I still get my plan done? When everything is coming at me from different directions and I've got to help, manage, support, all of those things. What's the answer to that? There's a lot of thises that hit us every day. And if you look at this, for you, first let's add up your thises. Say you have 5 little things happen in a week. We'll give you a week. 5 things happen in a week that knock you off for what you're planning to do. It's the traffic, it's somebody else's issue at work that you got to take on, whatever. And then you have one big this a year, the big giant this, okay? No, let's give you 10 years. One of the big thises, a year. And then the capital this, we'll do one a quarter. Okay, so we got 5 little ones, 4 the other ones in a year, and then one big one every 10 years. All right, just do the math. So say that's about 250, a little less than 250 thises you're going to do. So say 200. We'll give you an even low number. 200 things that are knocking you off course from what your plan was that you woke up that morning and decided to do. Your company set strategic goals. You probably, all the different departments met and you aligned them and you made sure your goals were rolling up to each other or rolling down, however your org chart is. And you have really set this great course for your company to go down this road and have these big strategic goals you're going to hit. Now you've got 200 things for you. And if you've got 100 people, that's 2,000 things that are knocking you off course. We've got some young companies in here that have 200 people. You got a bunch. We got Benefit Focus. There's more than 1,000 people on that campus. That's a lot of stuff that's going to knock those strategic goals off. Depending on how big your company is, there's a lot of things keeping you from your strategic goals. So what's the answer to that? How do you figure out the keys to unlock that so you can keep your productivity moving down, so you can keep your company moving towards these goals that you've really worked hard to put together. I've been in those rooms. Those goals are hard to get everybody to agree to. How do you get to them? Well, how do you find the key? Who has the key? What's the answer to that? It's like this big mystery. Maybe if you found someone who'd been through a lot of big thises and come out on the other side with more success and with some answers to how they did it, maybe that person could tell you how to get there. So here's my cheeky video.
From an early age, it was clear Nina would compete in gymnastics at a high level. At 13, she left her home and family in Florida to train full-time at an Olympic training center near D.C. Gymnastics was all Nina did, or wanted to do. She trained 6 to 8 hours a day. Her hard work paid off, landing her a spot on the USA gymnastics team. She traveled the world, competing in Japan, Hungary, Germany, appearing on magazine covers as an Olympic hopeful, along with Bart Connor and Mary Lou Retton. But it was not meant to be. Nina did not make the '84 Olympic team. Although a tough blow, Nina forged ahead, continued her training, and became one of the top college recruits in the country, signing with SEC powerhouse LSU. Her freshman year, Nina shines, until one week where the unthinkable happens. A career-ending injury brings her 14-year gymnastics career to an abrupt end. Nina switches gears, discovers a new passion, broadcast journalism, landing a news reporter job in Baton Rouge, and then hired away by the NBC station in Charleston, South Carolina.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Russ McKenzie.
And I'm Nina Sosman. Thanks for joining us.
It's here Nina becomes an award-winning investigative reporter and news anchor, voted Charleston's favorite news anchor 7 years in a row, and is blindsided when she's an unexpected casualty of budget cuts. Scooped up by the competition, Nina's television career continues to soar. She wins the Emmy for Best Newscaster in the Southeast. 15 years into her TV career, she's at the top of her game.
Also in Charleston County.
Until one fateful afternoon, when Nina became the news. More on this later. Approached by the CEO of a fast-tracked tech startup, Nina was offered a job she couldn't turn down. She immerses herself in a brand new industry, reaching even higher levels of success. She's promoted to vice president as the company experiences explosive growth. Leads marketing and communications during the company's highly successful IPO. And after 12 years on the leadership team, leaves to do this.
So this is stand here and share with other people how you do that. How do you go from something that clearly defines you to something else and then have success again? How do you do it as a company? How do you do it as an individual? What is the secret sauce? And what I found was people kept coming to me and asking me what that answer was. And at first I would give this flippant answer like, oh, well, I was a gymnast. You fall on your head, you stand up and you go, ta-da, and you just keep dancing. But after a while, I needed a better answer than that. And my kids were getting older and going to college. And I thought, how do you really answer that question? So I went on this really deep research and search to figure it out. And the more I looked, I kept coming back to this one word. I wrote a book, put it out there. I got a lot of feedback on the book. I did a lot of phone calls and discussions with people and looked at leaders, looked at companies, looked at athletes at the highest level. What type of person? What is it that is the secret sauce that makes that happen? And the word I kept coming back to was resilience. And it's not just grit. It's not just persistence. It's not just keep moving forward. This is the definition of resilience from the Center for Resilience that they came up with, and I think it's the piece of this definition, the ability to learn and the adapt in a positive way, that are keys. It's different than grit. It's different than persistence. So this resilience piece is really, really fascinating. And for me, I like to break everything down super simple. That's the news person in me. I believe it's how you handle the thises. How you handle the thises is directly related to your success. Whether you're an individual, whether it's your team that has an issue or this, or whether it's your whole company that has an issue or this. How you handle the thises, the problems that arise, will define whether or not you have success or not. Think back to Lego. They had a big problem and $800 million in debt. They could have just filed bankruptcy. What was about them that made them go, wait, we're going to do something different and think differently. Let's adapt. Let's grow. And what they did is they started talking to adult users of Legos. They went back to their base and looked at it differently. How do we do that? How do we teach that? So over this time, I put together 6 steps. I wanted to be able to share what I've learned and share what I know and what I believe is the answer to this in a really organized way. So I came up with the 6-step framework. It's not in any particular order. Hopefully there's some nuggets in here that you can take back to your company, to your team, to yourself, and you can use those as you face whatever this is coming at you. And I needed to come up with a name for this 6th step because I've been enough project planning and enough, we have project whatever giant bird or project whatever fish, we do that and all of you had to name projects. It's just fun. So I came up with an acronym for this, and so it was one that we could all remember instead of one that I would make up my own. We're going to Google it, which is Googling it. We Google everything, so we're going to Google this. And I just changed one letter, make it easy for you to remember. And what this stands for, when you break it down, is to put it in context, take ownership, look at your options, look at your gaps, assign some language, and then learn from the experience. And when we go through each of these, I'll unpack them a little bit. And I've done it from a corporate point of view this morning, so I can share with you how that might work for you or your company. But I hope that by putting it in a really organized fashion, it gives you some things that you need as you take on whatever challenges you're taking on. We have some young companies here who are getting ready to explode and grow. We have other ones that are just ideas in your head, wherever you are in the process. So we'll start with context. And this is really putting it in the big picture of your life or your career, whatever the big this is that's happening. Where does it fit in to the big picture? And to do this, just play with me here for a minute. We're going to put it in the book of your life. And we'll start with you as an individual. Picture the book of your life. How big is it? How thick is it? What color's the cover of your book? Is it a big, heavy hardback? Is it a flip-through softback you pick up in the airport? Is it a children's book? Maybe it's lots of novels, like lots of volumes like Harry Potter, and you have to buy it in a box set. What does the book of your life look like? You got it in your head? Make it into one book for me and give it a color on the cover, all right? Now open that book to today. Where are you in that book? Some of you are more towards the beginning of the book. And the younger folks in there, you're more towards the beginning of your book. Some of you in your 50s like me are in the middle of your book somewhere. It's just the middle. Don't put me over here, all right? So where are you in the book of your life, all right? We all open up to a page right now as you envision that. And you could do this for your company as well, but for right now, let's just talk about you as individuals. You open up this book and you're on this page. What I really like about this is we're having this crossover moment right now where we're all in each other's books because we're in this room. This is like that weird episode where the Flash and Supergirl are on the same one. Whoa, crossover moment. All our companies and all of us are in this crossover moment right here because we're all in the same place. What's really important about this book is this page you're on, okay? All the pages ahead are blank. Nothing on them yet. You have ideas, but nothing's on them yet. The language you use, nothing is on those pages. So when you think of it this way, when something big happens, you can go, oh, I'm going to help define what this future looks like for me, for my company, right? You have the ability to do that. And you have to look at it sometimes when you're in the middle of something big. Say you have a data breach, or say you have one of your biggest customers file a complaint against you, and it's public. I mean, there's big stuff that happens when you're running a company. Or in your own personal life, you heard this as something, you have a divorce, or something's happening with you. When you're in the middle of it, when that's happening and you're pulling in all your teams or you're trying to work through everything, it's really hard to see out of that space right now because you're in not panic mode, but your brain's working overtime. So I do this thing I call my 5-year thinking. And whether it's an executive who might come up to me at a conference and say, hey, my company's not doing great, and I just, can you sit down with me and chat with me about where, how you reinvented yourself? Or whether it's a neighbor who shows up at my house with a cup of coffee and goes, Nina, I just got laid off. I've got 3 kids. Can you just sit down and have coffee with me? And he'll share what do I do? How do I reinvent myself? So sometimes you have, it all is scary in a moment when you're in it. So this 5-year thinking is really key when you're in the big stuff. And how this works is, and I've done this with my college kids, when they would come home and their buddies would come over and oh, my life is horrible, I'm failing school, my girlfriend dumped me, I made a jerk of myself at this frat party last night, and I don't even want to walk on campus, everything's horrible. Haven't even told my parents I'm failing. And I'll look at this poor kid and go, hey, you're going to be okay, but he can't hear that. And I'll say, okay, when you're grown up, what kind of dog do you want? And first he looks at me like, okay, you're really annoying. Why are you asking me this? I'm pouring out my soul. Why are you asking me this? What kind of dog do you want? And they'll say, oh, I want a black lab. I'd love to have a black lab. And I'll say, okay, well, 5 years from now, when you and your black lab are walking down the beach, you're going to look at this moment in time and go, whoa, that was a really crappy semester. Or I really made some bad choices. Or that was really horrible, unlucky that I got out of that. But it is going to be 5 years from now, not what it is right now. So let's get you out of your own head and let's figure out where we're going. So same thing with you for something big that happens in your company. 5 years from now, it's not going to feel like it does right at this moment. So you got to get yourself out of your own head and go, what is that going to look like down the road for me or for my company? That 5-year thinking, to put it in context of the big picture in your book. If it's a big one, it may be a new chapter in your book. It may be harder to get out of, but it doesn't mean that it's going to sidetrack you forever for those big goals that you have. Let's talk about ownership. When you talk about something big happening in your life, it's sometimes difficult to figure out what piece of it do you own. When you're on the leadership team, you want to just jump in and kind of help wherever you can help, but what piece am I supposed to be helping with? And can I even help? I'm not an engineer. So sometimes when we would have big stuff going on, like a big system integration that didn't work, or an implementation with a client that they just had 5 different systems we were trying to pull into one and make the data talk to each other. It was just bigger than me, and I'm not an engineer, so how can I help? What is my part in that? Sometimes when you look at ownership and what part of this that you own, it's hard to do. So the analogy I used for this is be the CEO. So how many of you in here are actual CEOs? Excellent. All right. If you've been listening to a lot of podcasts and reading a lot of books, when I ask that question, all of you should raise your hand because you are the CEO of you. No one has more control over you, your vision, and your life than you do. So you have to become the CEO of you. What does a CEO do? He sets the vision, looks at all of his resources, analyzes what's working and what's not working. If it's your own personal life, what friends are working and not working, am I getting enough sleep? Am I getting the right food? Am I getting the right people in my life? Am I getting enough feedback? You are the CEO of you. So when something big goes wrong, your piece of it for your company, your piece of it for your responsibility is sometimes all about you looking at the big picture and going, what piece of this do I own and where can I affect change? What can I control? What can't I control? Ownership is really key because when you look at the things that you can control, like a CEO would, CEO cannot control the competition. The CEO cannot control some new product launch that he knew nothing about at another company. CEO can control what he has control of right then. So you, in your own mind, have to be the CEO of you in any situation and go, what can I control? What can't I control? And let's make a plan. And that brings us to options. I'm going to spend a little time on this one. What are your options? Options are tough because there's a lot, depending on where you are. I mean, there's a lot of different things you can do. And when something goes wrong, this is what I really is key. And please remember this when something goes wrong in your life. When something big goes wrong, people don't even question when you make a big change. They just assume you're going to make a big change because it is an opportunity. It creates an opportunity to go, wow, no one's going to look at me differently if I totally go in a new direction because that was big. Okay? So what are your options? Obviously, a lot of folks know this one. Begin with the end in mind. You're all in this business. You reverse engineer it. Where are we going? Let's reverse engineer it. Let's figure out how we're going to get there. So you look at the end of where you want your company to be. Maybe it's 5 years from now. I suggest a longer vision than that. If you're building a company, you need to think longer than 5 years. That blueprint, if you haven't read Blueprint to a Billion, read that book. It was like the Bible for a while for us. So look out and look at your vision and begin with the end in mind, and then let's reverse engineer it and figure out how we're going to get there. And I love this quote. If you haven't read Price Pritchard's Quantum Leap Strategy, the book is 39 pages long. Highly recommend it. I've read it probably 20 or 30 times. But this is a concept throughout there and a quote from that. You don't have to know how you're going to get there, but you must know where you want to go. And if you think about it when you look at this image, so I like to think I'm standing on the end of that dock right there. I'm standing on that dock and I go, okay, I want to go that way, too big. I want to go to a mountain, too big. I want to go to that mountain. Not the pointy one over here, but the jagged one. Let me pick that one. So that's the mountain I want to go to. And I'm standing on the end of the dock. Now, I know that's where I want to go, but there's a lot of stuff in there I can't see from that vantage point. But I know I've got to start so I can jump in this water and swim. I can get a kayak. I could rent a motorboat. Maybe there's a ferry right off the image and I don't even see it. I could just step on the ferry and go there. And when I get to the other side, to this grass on the other side, then I'm going to have to make the next decision. I can't even see if there's a road there, but I know I'm going towards that mountain. So I'm going to make decisions then. Still heading towards my mountain. I'm going to make the decision then. Maybe I'm going to hike it. Maybe I'm going to have a buddy meet me there and hike that way. Maybe I'm going to get a donkey. Or maybe there's a road and I'm going to call an Uber. You just don't know till you get there. There's a lot of choices to be made. You can't not go in that direction because you don't know the answer to everything. You've got to go in the right direction. It's the thinking behind that. So you're still headed towards that mountain. You make the decisions along the way, but you've got to choose a direction to go. And this can be tough sometimes. Did you know that Starbucks boasts they have 80,000 different versions of coffee? So there are different ways you can do coffee and drinks there. 80,000 different ones. So for some of you bucket 4 people, if you want to go and analyze all the different ways in which you could, to pick the very best Starbucks for you, you could drink 2 a day for 109 years, and then you would be able to decide which one was the best one. You would literally die before you got to the end of your analysis. So you can't do all of them. And this is really key. This is key for companies. And we did this from a leadership perspective. I can remember sitting in so many rooms, and so many ideas and so much going on. How do we decide where to go and what mountain we're going towards? That's a tough one, especially when you have a room full of really talented people with great ideas. And this happens in companies. In your hyper-growth stage, when you have about 200 people, when you get to about 1,200 people, it's actually a smaller group of people who are making the decisions. You get all the feedback, and then you actually have to make some decisions in a room when you're in a leadership team. But at the beginning, when I got to Benefit Focus, we had about 200 people. And so there were so many great ideas, and it was almost a harder way to lead because you had to have somebody who was really strong to go, okay, I'm going to pick this mountain in this vision, and I know there's a lot of great ideas, and we're going to do this piece, okay? So how do you get from this, where you're drinking 2 coffees a day for 109 years and you die and you never get to where you're going, to maybe just narrow it down. All these great ideas, you're going to have to pick a handful. You're going to have to pick, maybe it's just lattes. You're just going to have to pick a handful and go in that direction. And when you go in that direction with this handful, this is the trick. This is really difficult for smart people in a company. And so I can't stress this enough. When you narrow it down, you cannot keep looking at all the coffees you didn't choose. You can't be doing you can't look at the competition. You can't look, but they're doing this new product. That's going to take you from where you're going. You've got to choose your coffees and be happy with them. Be happy with the ones you did. Keep going in that direction. Do your due diligence. Keep an eye on that. But maybe assign a few people to keep an eye on the other stuff. But you have to have a team that's keeping you going on that path because this is what you chose. So you need to go down this road. So it's important to go down, to narrow it down. And then this is what I found when I did research for companies, for leadership, for athletes. Some form of this phrase was in every company, highly successful group that I talked with, or that I researched, or that I learned about. He who chases 2 rabbits catches none. You have to choose one. And I like to do this literally, like picture it, okay? You step in a field, and even if you're like a ninja athlete and you're super trained, and they put down 2 rabbits in front of you, and they let them go, I mean, you may be able to pounce and get one and chase it around, but the chances of catching both rabbits before they run away is really not real. It's not going to happen. He who chases 2 rabbits catches none. You have to choose a rabbit, and you have to go after it. It's going to move, and but that's, you have to. And as a company, as an individual, if you have big goals and big stuff you want to do, you got to do that. And as a company, you have to choose one too. I take benefit focus for an example. We had for a long time employer and carrier. Which one we have the employer business, we have the carrier business. How do you do them both? It was a challenge. But at some point, one person had to decide. Someone has to make a decision. Everybody has to get on board. Which one's going to be the focus for that year, for that time, and for that generation of our company? And it would change sometimes. But in those years, there were people who knew on the carrier team that knew they were not going to be the focus for that year. We had things we needed to do this way, and they were going to be, have less people, less budget, less whatever. And then other times it was the other way around. And we knew the employer business was going to take a back seat, and we were going to go down this road, and it was going to be really carrier focused. But everybody knew on the leadership team. We all knew that was, and then we made sure that everybody understood. We had one big goal out there. You can't have two. He who chases two rabbits catches none. If you want to do something big, if you want your company to be big on the other end of whatever you're trying to do, you have to choose something and go in that direction. You don't have to know exactly how you're going to get there, but you got to pick a mountain and you got to make the decisions. It helps you make all those decisions too. It makes it so much easier when you just finally come down to one thing, because you can make all your decisions and get everybody on board, because we got to do this thing. I know that's important. I know that's a great idea. I love all the experience and the exciting things that are coming in from new people, but we're on this mission. This is the mission. Let's make that fit in this way. Keep an eye on these things, but that's our mission. That make sense? So let's talk about gaps. Now gaps, this is a little different. This is not tech people. This is not buy, build, acquire. This is not gaps in your product offering. This is not that. This is gaps in you and your thinking and where you're trying to go. And I think that this may be right up there with narrowing it down, one of the key things that I can share with you this morning, because it is obvious we have a room full of really smart people, and I'm a little bit of a control freak, and I consider myself kind of smart myself. So this is hard for me, and it's going to be hard for you, and it's going to be hard for your company. The gaps is difficult. It's gaps in what you know. So sometimes we had this great idea, and we are running down this path, and we are going in a direction that we're really excited about, and then we start calling meetings, and we get people in, and we get everybody going in that direction, and we're really excited about it. But we're down in the weeds because it's all in our head, and we know where we want to go, and we're down in the weeds, and we can't see what we can't see because we're powering ahead. This is where your gaps in your own vision. You have to pull in other people, and you have to let them poke holes in it before you run straight ahead. And this is hard to do because it makes you vulnerable. It also, people could actually show you that your idea is not a good one. I had 2 brilliant business ideas that I thought were fantastic, and I built business plans, and I wrote them all up, and I went and sat down with Mason Holland in his office, and I sat there, and he was my gap guy, and I sat there with him, and I was like, okay, so I'm gonna do this and this, and I'm gonna hire these people, and this is gonna be, look at this, 5-year margins are fantastic. And he went, oh, what about this? I was like, well, crap, that won't work. But he knows things I don't know. He is different, his brain's wired different than me, his experience is different. So this is really important. When you're in the weeds, you cannot see from a you may be really smart and really good at powering towards the other end of that hedge, but you may not can see that turns a bit. You just can't see when you're down in the weeds. You have to let somebody else in. I'm going to prove it to you right here. So everybody look at the screen if you're not looking right now. Ready? Okay. Watch this. Okay. Raise your hand if you saw the tree first. Raise your hand if you saw the people first. All right. We all saw the same image at the same time. We didn't see the same things. We are wired differently. Our life experience is different. When we think we have a great idea, we need other people who don't see things the way we do in our decisions. If it's personal, if it's something you're getting ready to do, I highly recommend you find somebody you trust to talk about your dreams and hopes and all the stuff that's out there. It's scary because once you put it out there, it gets real. Just find one person you trust just to share it with so they can poke some holes in it or boost you up, whatever. It makes it real, which helps, and it makes them, they can tell you what you're not seeing. That is how you get to the big stuff. When I left television and went to get into news, I called people. I called Jeanette Alterman from the Center for Women here in Charleston. I called Ambassador Lader, who said, because I'd been to a dinner with him, and I was like, hey, I'm getting ready to do this. You met me. What do you think I'm good at? So you have to bring in some other people to get that input to make big decisions and make changes for personal life or for big companies. And in leadership, if you have a company and you're leading it, this is really key too. Your great idea is probably a really great idea, but before you set everybody in motion, bring in a smaller group of people and let them poke some holes in it, be vulnerable, be honest, take it. It's hard to do sometimes. It will make you go in a direction that's so much better than where you would have done if you just powered on by yourself. It just takes more people than one. So the next thing is language, and this is really key for this audience. There are some marketing folks in here. Who's marketing? So you guys already know this. You set the language. The language you use to talk about whatever is happening, good or bad in your company, is really key. So for our discussion about language this morning, remember, we're talking about when things go wrong. So we're going to start here with this mom talking to their child. Do you think that she's saying, oh, mommy had a bad quarter, and she's not very smart, and she works with a bunch of idiots, and we're probably gonna have to lose our home, and I might have to cancel Christmas? No, that is not what mommy is saying. Mommy's probably saying, oh, mommy's a little grumpy because work is tough, but mommy's smart and she works with smart people and we're gonna be fine. It's not like we're gonna have to cancel Christmas or anything. We need to talk to ourselves individually in a kinder way, or like you're talking to a child. And we need to keep this in mind when we're talking about things that go wrong in our companies. And I think we do a lot of this language. I know personally I've done in the past, there's probably, we've all done it, so I'm not gonna make you raise your hand, but we use terms and language that can really damage our long-term story and where it fits into the story of our book, of ourselves or of our company. And this is the self-sabotage. And this is not just crisis management, if you're looking at it from a company perspective. This is the self-sabotage that we're doing to ourselves and our teams. So we overgeneralize. This always happened to our department. This always happens to me. They always throw all this stuff at us. Or we catastrophize. This is never going to work. We are ruined. We're going, this is the worst thing ever. We are ruined. Done. Or we jump to conclusions. This client has not called back in 2 hours. I am certain they went with somebody else. Or we exaggerate. They put 1 million new JIRAs in my bucket every day. Never going to get through all these. The scope creep on this is beyond anything anyone could ever imagine. We just exaggerate. Or we belabor it. We go, oh, if Tom had controlled that scope creep, we'd be in a better spot. Or if Carol had done her part. Or if they hadn't thrown us out at the last minute. Or if they hadn't set some deadline that was ridiculous. This ridiculous deadline for this project. And we spend time having these conversations. And we've all done this. But the energy we spend on this and the language that we use on this is just keeping us from getting to where we're going. And if you are using this language and it's coming out of your mouth, that's a problem. Because you start the echo. So if something big happens in your company and it's a mess, and you go, this is a disaster. This is horrible. We're never going to get through this. Oh my gosh. And then they hear you say this out loud. And then your team hears you say it out loud. And your team takes it out to other people. They say it out loud. And the word is disaster. This is a mess. They go to the next person, it's a disaster. It's a mess. Then you go to a bar that night. You're walking through there with your husband and your wife. And then you hear some people at the bar like, oh, did you hear that team had a disaster? It's a mess. Okay? That's how that works. You create. How about this? Something big happens. You're like, whoa, didn't see that coming. That's going to be a challenge. We're going to have to get on this. Then your team goes, we've got a big challenge. It's going to have to get on this. And then their teams and people are walking through the parking lot. Did you hear that? There's a challenge. They're going to have to get on this. And then you walk through the bar that same night with your spouse and you hear people at the, some young people at the counter talking who report down the road from you somewhere and they're like, oh yeah, their team has this big challenge they're having to handle. Very different. Same situation. You create this echo. You've got to keep the language out of it. The language in your head, if it's something personal that happens to you, the language in your head becomes a language that comes out of your mouth, the language that goes to your teams. And your teams, you say it in a meeting, and then it goes to their teams, and then it goes out. And if you're going public, it goes to the street. And that language comes back to you, the words you choose, that language, perception's reality. You've got to control the language, not just from a marketing perspective. If you're an engineer and you're in operations, you are in a situation, you have got, when something goes wrong, the language you use is so key in a corporate setting. Can't stress that enough. So last piece is experience. We've all been in these meetings. I'm going to put up the next slide just because I know this group will enjoy it so much. How many people have been in one of these meetings? A lessons learned meeting. How about an experiential sharing meeting? This is when something goes wrong and they put everybody in a room and go, okay, let's talk about what went wrong and come up with, after any event we do. I went through and dug through all different kinds of companies and the words that they use for those meetings, that Monday morning quarterback, what we all do, when we all get together and we go, okay, what's our lessons learned? Everybody turn in your lessons learned. That's what we called it at Benefit Focus for a few years. Lessons learned. And we'd all roll our eyes and go, oh, my lessons learned document. These are key. After you do a conference, who's been to a conference ever in your life? Okay. Who, after the conference, got a survey and said, what do you like about the conference? Yeah. Do you like the coffee? Did you like the timing? Were the sessions too long? Ernest may send out something after this. Did you like the speaker? How was the coffee? Aren't you glad that Starbucks changed where they put the little spigot so it doesn't pour on us anymore? So they finally iterated. We were so happy. So you get that feed. You'll fill out that survey, okay, and it will come back to the person there, some magical person who sent out the survey, and they will listen to all your answers and say, oh, we got to change the coffee. Oh, the sessions were too long. They'd like them shorter. They're not crying or falling apart because you gave them feedback. They're not letting it beat up on them because you didn't love every speaker and you didn't love the food that they chose. They make changes so it gets better, so the next time you come to their conference, it's improved. This is what we need to do when things go wrong. We can't let it hurt us. We actually have to adjust and grow stronger. This is the piece of resilience. This is the adjusting piece. This is the learning piece. It's the most important piece for some of us because it's hard to take that feedback. The first time I would ask my husband, did my butt look big in these jeans? And he'd go, kinda, like that hurt. But then I was glad to know it. And then the third or fourth time, it's not quite as painful when he's like, that outfit, you asked, it's just not good. So we need to, in our own lives or with our company, when we get the feedback, when you do whoever's leading culture at your company sends out a survey and it comes back that, everybody hates everything, because that's, go to Glassdoor, you can find it out. That's just the way we have to learn, and we have to make adjustments and improve. The experiential piece is so important. If you're running a company, if you're running a group, this is really key to make this change. That's how we become that big tree. That's the adjust and the grow stronger and the learning piece. Really, really important. And that's how you build these superpowers. So all those body blows that are blowing you off track, that you're not getting to where you want to go, those little thises, the everyday stuff, you build a culture where people get comfortable handling the thises. You build a culture in your company where you keep things moving on track. That's a piece of the superpower that you're building for yourself or your company. That's the strength that gets you to the big stuff. That's how you get to be the big guy in the end. That's how you have this big success. And I share this from a lot of different perspectives. Because one of the things that you need to know is when your company goes south, or you get fired, or you have a data breach, or something big happens and you feel like you're defined by it, like my career is over or my company's over, you aren't. And so I'm going to share you through the big this that I left out of the beginning of this, so you will know that it doesn't define you. And that big this is my piece of my story that I haven't shared. Some of you know it because you were here in town. I see some nods. And some of you are new who just moved here, so they don't know it. So when I was a news anchor, a popular news anchor, whatever you want to call it, and I did the news every night, I sat next to a guy who became my best friend. We were just really close. We were very good friends when we did the news together. And one day I took the day off of news, and I went and I wanted to meet the school bus and be a mom like all the other moms, because I worked 2 to midnight. I didn't get to do that often. So I went to meet the school bus, and the school bus comes, and kids all jump off. You can hear it coming around the corner, if you've met the bus before. And then all the kids jump off. It was a big school bus stop. And so a bunch of kids jump off. There's a lot of moms and kids. And I'd gotten there early because my co-anchor's wife was at the bus stop as well. It was their house. And so I'd gotten there early so we could catch up, and we were playing with her new baby in the yard. And she had an 11-month-old, adorable. And we're sitting there playing with the baby, and the school bus comes, and everybody's running around. Our boys jump off. They were in the 3rd grade together, and they throw their backpacks and do what little boys do. And we go to leave, after everybody gathers up their stuff, and we go to leave and jump in the car, and all the moms are getting their kids together to go do whatever they're going to do that afternoon. And my son jumps in the car. Here's your juice box. How was your day? And then we go to leave. It was a beautiful, sunny autumn day. And in the commotion of all of that, in the movement of all of that day and the people everywhere and the bus stop crazy that it is, no one had noticed, myself included, that her sweet baby had crawled behind the tire of my car. And I backed up. In that moment, I went from world-class athlete, woman who was very popular on the news, to the lady who ran over the baby. In that moment, everything changed. When your company goes under, when you have a data breach and it all goes south, when something big happens in your life, it all changes, but it doesn't have to define you. I'm going to read this part. I'm going to unpack it for you back into this. So, ownership. His mother and I took ownership of our relationship, and we vowed to get through this together. Baby did not die. I'll jump to that to take you out of this painful moment. I promised I'd take you out of the painful moments. He's 15. He's at Wando High School. He's a happy, healthy, handsome high school kid. It was a miracle in a lot of ways. Amazing doctors, amazing community support. A lot of things went into this miraculous recovery of this child. In the beginning, when this happened, we had a lot of work to do. And we couldn't see it then, but now we can see it on the other side of it 15 years later. She spoke, his mother spoke at the MUSC graduation this year. It was an amazing speech for those of you. You can go find it online. It's fabulous. And she speaks from the patient advocacy and parent and patient family care. So we got through it together. I became the CEO of me. Back to to context first. Let's start with context. Context was difficult. Didn't want this to be in the book of my life. Couldn't see that 5 years down the road on the beach, but I'm here to tell you the 5 years came and went, and we all survived. If your company doesn't make it, your product flops, you will survive 5 years down the road. Something else will be in your life that will take up as much space in your brain as that did. His mother and I took ownership of our relationship. We vowed to get through this together on the ownership piece. I became the CEO of me. I made changes. I got help. I got help with my children. I found a good therapist. I did the things that I need. I adjusted my friends. I had some friends that were caught in the drama, so I had to look at my resources. I had to make some changes, made those changes, take ownership of what I could control. And the options, there were TV trucks on my lawn, there were prayer vigils all over town. I really didn't see any good options at the time. I did want to take the early exit. There was a time where I just really was ready just to be done and wanted to, at the age of 38, just check out and be finished with this whole thing. But I didn't. I began with the end in mind. I decided the best option was to get back on the air, to help him, my co-anchor, and to regain my confidence. So when big stuff happens to your company, you have to create a path forward for yourself. We went back on the air together. We had a conversation. We went back on the air together, and we sat there every night next to each other. Now, the gaps, my therapist saw some gaps that I couldn't. I made this really bold decision to go back on the air, but sitting next to my co-anchor, he knew, would be a trigger that I wasn't aware of. So I suggested the going on the air, and he suggested a 1-year trial period. He said, do it for a year. Know that in a year, if it's not something you're comfortable with, if it's harder than you can, you have an out. Just regain you, but in a year, we're going to talk this again, and you have an out. And I did. I was ready to do something else after that year. I did take the out, but it was nice to know it was there on the really tough days, to know that I had a year in me. And he knew that, and I did not. If you're a leader and you have to let folks, you have to explain your vision. This is part of that. This is part of that, explaining your vision. I couldn't see the things that I couldn't see. He could see the things that I was not able to see. And then when I wanted to get out, that's when I had to go have those conversations and talk to other people about, what am I good at? What is my next move? That's not something that I could, even though I was bright and talented, I was not in a position to do that myself. I needed people's help. And that's hard to do sometimes. The language in my head was really ugly at first. I went from Charleston's favorite news anchor to the woman who had run over her friend's baby. Like, in my head, that's all I could do. How would I ever be anything but that? It was really a difficult thing. So that's why I said, when something big happens, it's all you can think about. It's really difficult to change the language in your head. The language in your head is so important. It was an accident. I had to accept the word accident. We all accepted the word, it was an accident. Bad things happen to good people. It was an accident. I talked about it as an accident. I talked about my love for him, my love for the family, my love for the community. That became the story. That is the story you hear now. They celebrate, we all celebrate his life every October. His family celebrates in their own way. The language that they use is similar to mine. That's the story of this. It was a miracle. It was amazing. The doctors were amazing. This community support was amazing. So even if something really bad happens with you or your company, it doesn't have to define you. You choose the language and you move forward. And the experience, I adjusted and grew stronger. I was no longer afraid of change. I wasn't afraid to jump into a new company. When the company was getting ready to go public and other people were anxious and worried about what if it goes wrong, I was like, well, then it goes wrong. We're just going to go do this thing. How do we get the TAM, the total addressable market? That's so scary. How do we just find it? And it's not the end of the world if we don't. We power through. The worst case was nothing compared to where my head had already gone. I had built this superpower. It was this weird strength that I had had. So when other people were struggling, I could pick them up and go, come on, we got this thing. Let's go. That's why you have to build a culture of this in your company. You have to build a culture of strength. So when something big happens, you have some handful of people, or maybe your whole teams, that look at each other and go, this is crap. We've got this. We're going to move forward. We can make this happen. This does not define us. This does not become who we are. And at the time, it's hard to do, but you need to build a culture that is ready for that. I think that's what I want to share with you today as you write your future. That the big stuff, the really big thises, the really big thises become part of your story, but they're just part of it. The capital thises will be a page turner. They will be a whole new chapter and take you in a new direction for you or your company. But then the capital T thises and the other ones will be something you might mention, and then all those everyday thises, all those little ones, they don't even fit in your book. They're not even going to make it into your book. So the time and energy you're spending on those is only keeping you from where you want to go, whether it's your company or whether it's you as an individual. The energy that you're spending on those is energy you're not going to have to spend on your really big stuff that you want to do, the cool stuff that you are building and creating that's going to help your clients and customers. That's important. So the little stuff, the little thises need to go. And on the first page of your book, first page of your company's story, there's zero resilience. We're not born with it. Resilience is not, you don't come out either resilient or not. Resilience is something that we build like a muscle. And we need to flex it and we need to use it. You as your company and your culture needs to use that muscle. And that's what I challenge you today. So when some big this happens, or some little this, in the weeks to come, something happens to you. Some this that is on your mind and you're thinking, how do I get past? Put it in the context of your book. Where does it fit in? Assign some language to it. And then know that you're in control of where it goes in the future, for you or for your company. Because how you handle the thises is directly related to your level of success. Thank you.